If you're a filmmaker or you've been following the YouTube filmmaking community for any length of time, odds are you've probably at least thought about starting a YouTube channel of your own. Freelancing is a tough grind, and I know that personally when I saw how much success creators out there like Peter McKinnon or Potato Jet or Mark Bone or whoever have had with their online businesses, I was super curious about whether or not YouTube could be the answer to some financial security and freeing myself from having to constantly chase down new clients. Now obviously I decided to go for it, and I'll just straight up say it's been life-changing in so many ways, and starting this channel has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. But considering how many new channels have popped up even since I started 2 years ago, the question most people are probably asking themselves is whether or not YouTube still makes sense for filmmakers in 2024, or if it's just too crowded these days. So in this video, I'm going to break down the YouTube landscape as I see it, what it takes to stand out, the type of money you could realistically expect to earn, and whether or not I still think it's worth it to try. So first off, I should probably say that I'm not a full-time YouTuber, not by a long shot. I still make the majority of my income as a documentary cinematographer and director, and if I were forced to choose between the two, I'm sorry to say, but I'd probably prioritize that side of my career over the channel. I have no plans of quitting my professional work, and as I shoot this video, I'm gearing up for a shoot in Kenya on the Somalia border, and I'm working daily with an editor to finish up a feature doc I shot a couple of years ago, and I just wrapped a proof of concept shoot for an indie movie here in Toronto. YouTube is something I do very much on the side, even though it takes up an ungodly amount of time, but that's not likely to change anytime soon. But with all that said, this channel has had a massive impact on my life, and I have no plans to walk away from it or put in any less effort, because if anything, I'm going to be putting more effort into it this year. It's given me the financial freedom to turn down jobs I didn't believe in, it's connected me to all sorts of filmmakers and companies I never would have met otherwise, and yes, it's been great to get free gear as well. It's been amazing to see this community grow over the last 2 years, and it's been 100% worth the effort, even if it sometimes feels like an endless black hole of time and effort. But more on that in a second. I also think that YouTube has the potential to change the lives of anyone else watching this too, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how the YouTube filmmaking game works, and a lot of people out there are coming at it from the wrong angle. So let's tackle some of those misconceptions one by one, and hopefully by the end you should have a clearer picture of what the YouTube landscape looks like, so you can decide if you want to go for it yourself or not. So the first logical question is whether or not YouTube can help fast track your filmmaking career. And the answer to that one is the always frustrating yes and no, so let's unpack that for a second. And I'm making the assumption here that you actually want to be a filmmaker first and YouTuber second, which is another thing we'll get into later. So as long as that is the case, let's talk about how YouTube can help, because it definitely can. Maintaining a channel, especially one with a regular weekly posting schedule like mine, is not easy. I'll just be straight up about that. I've set up some pretty efficient systems and workflows over the years, but there's no getting around the fact that it takes a lot of time and focus. I'd say that takes me about 6 hours of writing and editing before I even get to shooting anything, and considering I just listed off all the other non-YouTube things I'm juggling at the moment, making that happen every week isn't exactly convenient. And don't forget the thumbnails, because making those things will suck the life out of you. The weird thing is that adding all this extra stuff to my workload has actually made me more productive, not less. It might sound counterintuitive, but having more to do between jobs has pushed me to be a lot more strict with my schedule and time, which leads to less time wasting on dumb stuff and just a higher overall output. Because I have a deadline to hit every week, even if it's a deadline I made for myself, it forces me to get up and get to work every single day. I'm not talking about becoming a workaholic or anything here, but it used to be that between gigs, I just sort of unpack my gear and then mostly just chill while I waited for the next job to start. And while that might sound nice, it actually kind of drove me crazy, because I just feel better when I'm making stuff. Creating more leads to a higher output on all fronts, from pitching new projects to finishing old ones, and having something to structure my day around, i.e. developing ideas for new videos, it means that just overall I can make and create way more than I did before. It also forces me to share my process publicly, which helps me understand it better myself, and the increased exposure creates all sorts of opportunities. So basically what I'm saying is making stuff and putting it into the world on a regular basis makes makes me better. And the extra eyes on my work has brought in all sorts of gigs I never would have gotten otherwise. So far, so good, right? What's not to love about that? Well, on the flip side of that is what I think most people get wrong about YouTube. It's easy to look at the top creators in a field and see the endless stream of free stuff, the big ticket sponsorships, and all that sweet, sweet side hustle income, and then want that for yourself. And all that stuff is a great perk of a successful channel, but starting out with this end result in mind is setting yourself up for disaster and disappointment. And just to be clear, I'm not calling myself a top creator here because realistically mine is a medium-sized channel at best. The difference between what I'm doing and what someone like, I don't know, Peter McKinnon is doing, like leveraging his audience to go out and shoot insane Red Bull campaigns during the solar eclipse, it's just on a totally different scale. But my point here is that if you start YouTube with only the end result in mind, you're probably gonna struggle. And here's why. Now, I should admit that I did start this channel with business goals in mind, and I did hope that one day it would supplement my income and create new opportunities, which it's done, more than I ever would have dreamed, to be honest. But at the same time, when I hit record on that first horrible video, I made a promise to myself that I would post a video every week for 2 years before I decided whether or not to keep going. My target was to hit 1,000 subs by the end of the first year and then 10,000 by the end of the second year, and if I made progress any faster than that, I'd count it as a bonus. Now, as things turned out, I hit those goals a lot faster than anticipated, but even if that hadn't happened, I still would have hit my weekly schedule without expecting anything in return. Because the reality is that other than committing to regular creation and trying to make each video a little bit better than the last one, you don't really have very much control over how fast your channel grows. Let me show you what I mean. If we go back and look at my videos in terms of popularity, the one that stands like head and shoulders above the others by more than double is this one about basic ideas of cinematography. Maybe that's even the video that brought you to this channel, because out of everything I've made, that single video brought in more new subscribers than anything else by far. And if I'm being honest with myself, it's not even a very good video. It's almost 2 years old at this point, and back then I was still pretty uncomfortable in front of the camera. It's just kind of generic, basic advice like shoot 24 frames a second, and when I watch it back, I'm even a little bit embarrassed by it. I definitely wouldn't make this video again today, and actually when I first released it, it got like 200 views or something. It wasn't until a full year after it was published when for some reason the algorithm latched onto it and started pushing it out hard that those views started to roll in. And since then, none of my videos have even come close to those kinds of numbers. So what does that tell us? Well, basically that you never know what's going to work on YouTube or when. I think I've made many videos that are way better than that one, but it still dominates my view count by a wide margin. And if we have so little control over what's going to work and what isn't, there's no way for anyone out there to guarantee success for themselves on the platform other than just continuously making videos for a very long period of time. And making videos on a weekly schedule is a lot of work, like we just talked about. So if you're only making them for the sake of going viral and hitting a big payday or getting tons of free stuff, you're gonna run out of enthusiasm pretty quick. What I'm saying here is you have to be making videos because you enjoy the process and you genuinely want to share your journey instead of just with the expectation of a big return, because that return might take a long time to come, if at all. And if it comes, it'll probably be when you least expect it, and you're probably not even gonna understand why. So yes, the gear and the extra income is totally possible because I'm living proof, but if this is your expectation from day one, you're gonna get a pretty brutal dose of reality when you spend hours and hours a week making stuff, and your first 50 videos only get like a few hundred views or even a few dozen views. Results come very, very slowly for most people, so if that stuff is your only motivation, then you're in for a long grind. So why bother? Well, for starters, I like the process of making videos. I like sitting for an hour or two in the morning and working on scripts in a coffee shop, and I've built up a system for batch recording and post-processing, mostly thanks to my amazing editor Santi, which means that I can keep publishing even when I'm busy with other shoots. And in the 2.5 years since I released that first video, I've still never missed a week's upload, no matter what else I have going on in my life. I won't lie, it's been really challenging, not to mention seriously expensive at times, to make that happen. But because I like doing it, I never minded, even when there was little to nothing coming back from it. If you're not willing to commit to the process and a timeline like that, then I think you're gonna get frustrated in a hurry. But let's assume that you also like making videos and you're willing to make a video a week for 2 years. What can you expect to get back? Well, if/when things start to work out, there can be some pretty serious benefits. Free gear might be one of the first things that jumps to mind, and I'm not going to pretend like I don't like that aspect of things. I have great relationships with a ton of filmmaking brands, and if I need something for a shoot or even to add to my kit full time, I can likely get it. I'd say that the gear offers started coming in at around 2,000 subscribers, but obviously those were some pretty small time offers right at the start. Think of off-brand editing programs and smartphone lights, things like that. At around 5,000 subscribers, the offers got a little bit better, so say things like royalty-free music sites and budget brand lighting companies, but I'd say it was around the 10K mark when I started to get into contact with the kinds of companies I was really interested in. That's when I started working with brands like Audiio, the sponsor of today's video, and a bunch of other cool companies like F-Stop Bags and Small Rig, so gear that was actually useful as a professional. And if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you'll know that this is the only kind of gear I'm interested in. And sorry, I just need to take a second and touch on something important when it comes to the YouTube gear industrial complex, because as we talk about this stuff, I don't want to push out the idea that just accumulating massive quantities of gear is going to help you, either as a YouTuber or a professional. I feel like a broken record because I say this so often, but I say no to about 90% of the offers that come my way, and the only stuff I feature on this channel are things that I'm actually planning to use professionally as a documentary cinematographer. So if you do decide to take the leap and start a channel, when those offers do start coming in, please don't just use your platform to promote cheap crap. The world just doesn't need more e-waste, and if your plan on YouTube is to be that guy reviewing gimbal after gimbal without actually testing it in the real world in actual shooting scenarios, I think you're gonna struggle. YouTube is competitive these days, and the only thing that works is creating trust and providing value to your audience, which is never really gonna happen if all your videos are about how this budget ND plus mist filter is changing the game for filmmakers. To do YouTube well, you need to provide value, like I just said, which means having something to say instead of just something to buy. When I look at the dozens of new channels popping up on my feed every day, the vast majority of them are about some random piece of gear that all filmmakers need, but very few of them are actually saying anything. Tech reviews are great and they have their place on the internet for sure, but if we're talking about making a filmmaking channel and not a tech channel, then this approach isn't gonna get you very far. And please don't think I'm saying you need like a decade of experience to have something to say, because in a bit we'll talk later about a filmmaker I did one-on-one consultation calls with last year, who I think is providing a ton of values through his small channel, even though he's still in the earlier stages of his film career. And if you wanna have something to say, something real to say, you need to actually be doing things, which means using that gear to make stuff and then sharing how that helped you or didn't help you. Talking about how nice the packaging for a piece of gear is or unboxing something isn't adding value or helping, it's selling. And there is a time and place for selling. I mean, this is a sponsored video after all, but as much as I like Audiio as a company, products can't be the main focal point of your channel if you don't back it up with perspective and personal experience. Getting back to the numbers though, like I said, it was around the 10K mark where the more interesting offers started to come in, and it's steadily grown from then to now. At the time of recording, the channel is sitting at around 83,000 subscribers, so I'm not at the point where the huge companies like Sony and DJI are throwing cameras at me, and I'm not holding my breath for those to fall in my inbox anytime soon either. So don't expect to get a brand new FX6 in the mail, because it's probably going to take many, many years of hustling before that happens. Now let's talk cash, because this is probably one of the most misunderstood things about YouTube. You just don't make that much, at least not from YouTube itself. A YouTube business can eventually turn into a life-changing source of revenue, but AdSense, or the money YouTube pays you for putting ads on your videos, isn't all that much unless you have a massive following and get hundreds of thousands of views on every video. Actually, once you factor in what I pay my editor and what it costs for all those monthly subscriptions to Adobe and Dropbox and Calendly and Loom and all the other things it takes to run a remote digital business, the ad revenue from YouTube doesn't even cover half of my expenses. If you're really into this stuff, I can make a full business breakdown of what I bring in through YouTube later, so let me know in the comments if that sounds interesting. Or if you'd even be interested in a full course about how filmmakers can do YouTube the right way, let me know that, because I have been thinking more and more about it lately. But for this video, I don't want to get bogged down in the weeds too much. And I should also say that my numbers are a little lower than they could be because I have the mid-roll ads turned off. I personally think ad breaks suck as a viewer, so I'm happy to leave that extra 50% on the table. Turning them on would help, but it still wouldn't be enough to cover my base costs. The next logical income source is sponsored videos, which you've all seen before, and like I said, this is a sponsored video as well. I know some channels make big bank from sponsorships, but I honestly don't do enough of them to make life-changing income. But that's not because there aren't offers coming in necessarily. It's mainly just a philosophical thing on my end, because just like with gear, I don't like promoting things that I don't use myself or that I don't believe are genuinely useful. So let's use this video as a real-time example, and then you can make up your own mind about whether or not you do things differently. So the sponsor of this video, Audiio, if you don't know what they are, it's a royalty-free music and sound effect provider, and if you're into YouTube or filmmaking, then I'm sure you've heard of these services before. But apart from the fact that I really like the team there and they give me access to all the royalty-free music I need to run this channel and even some of my professional shoots too, why do I promote them and say no to so many other people, even if those brands offer more cash? Well, it's because I actually think they're relevant to my audience and a really good deal. Like, I know a lot of people who are following this channel are early to mid-career filmmakers who might not have the budgets to work with dedicated composers, meaning they often need high-quality music on a low budget. I'm also guessing that for people watching this video, they also have at least a passing curiosity in starting a YouTube channel, which they'd also need music for. That makes Audiio actually helpful in a way that I don't think a lot of stuff I'm being asked to promote is, and for me at least, that matters. And like I said, I'm assuming that a lot of people who are watching have fairly limited budgets, and Audiio checks that box as well because it's the best value music provider I know of. They also seem to recognize that and have offered viewers of this channel a crazy 70% discount using the code Luke70, so I think the full year costs just $59. If you compare that to $200 that most other services charge, it's an amazing deal. Look, my point here isn't to do the perfect ad read because this is appearing way too late in the video to be ideal from a marketing perspective, but I'm just trying to communicate that if you're gonna work sponsorships into your content and not make viewers rage and close YouTube, you need to find brands that align with what your audience wants. That's why, apart from the long-term relationship I've had with Audiio for a while now, I've only accepted I think 4 or 5 other sponsorships ever. And even then it can get complicated because I'm also really picky about my independence. So like if brands require me to clear the videos before I publish them, that's also a deal breaker for me, and it ends the conversation with a lot of companies. Last month I actually had a whole video shot and prepared about a popular piece of pre-production software that I actually really like, but they wouldn't budge on their need for Final Cut, and so I had to scrap the whole thing. And honestly, I'm pretty sure they would have loved the video, but I'm too unwilling to give up the ability to say whatever I want to back down from that. And like I said, the only thing that makes a channel work is the trust with your audience. So yeah, I could probably sponsor every video on this channel and 4x my income, but I want to stay true to my beliefs and my code, and I think that's something you need to keep in mind if you're planning on building a following of your own. Money is a product of trust and value, and if you want to keep that trust and keep providing value, you can't just use your channel as a license to print money. So okay, between AdSense and sponsorships, I usually just about break even every month on the hard cost plus my editor's salary. So where then does the life-changing extra income come from? Well, mainly from the additional products and services I've created on the side, like my cinematography course or one-on-one mentorship and consultation calls and live speaking events and even the odd workshop. The cinematography course in particular has been more popular than I imagined, and I think we've worked with around 250 talented filmmakers in the last 12 months, which is super cool, and the cash helps a lot. But the course isn't YouTube, and neither are the rest of those things. They're entirely separate products that I had to build on top of making the weekly videos. Like, the course has something like 80 videos and more than 12 hours of content at this point, and that took a lot of effort to make. Not counting the hundreds of hours I spent writing scripts and planning videos. I had to fly in BTS shooters, I had to rent shooting locations, build a website, and foot the bill for the editing. I'm not complaining about any of that because it was totally worth it, but it's a long way from free passive income. What I'm getting at is that these aren't just things that passively make money for me. These take a ton of direct input, a lot of time, and they're all based on me having almost 15 years of professional experience. And I just want to make sure that you're well aware of how this works in case you think starting a channel is a free pass to print cash, because it is not. So with all that reality out of the way, let's get back to the central question here. Is YouTube still worth it for filmmakers in 2024? I know I've been making it seem really tough out there, which is because it is. So maybe it's going to be a surprise that my answer is actually yes, absolutely it's worth it, but not if your main motivator is quick cash or an overnight promotional boost for your business. Those things will come eventually, but only after a very long time of building up an audience who trusts you, which means making a ton of high value content, maybe even for years. That doesn't mean that you have to be some crazy high level industry pro to make it work, but you do need to help people. And in my opinion, that means actually creating projects of your own and not just sitting at your desk talking about FPV drones that have never actually been used on a real project. So let's take a look at a real world example of a new YouTube filmmaker doing things the right way. Last year, I started working with a former LA Times intern turned National Geographic explorer named Austin Meyer, which led to him launching his own channel, which I'll link to in the description. Now, Austin is super talented and a very solid filmmaker, but I think he'd be the first to tell you that he hasn't hit his full potential in the industry yet. For me, he's a perfect case study of a filmmaker using YouTube to educate others while still being on the journey himself. So again, you don't need to be Roger Deakins to have something to say, but you do need to be hustling yourself. And even though Austin's channel is small, I think he's hit that balance really well and he has the right outlook.
I'm a huge believer in creative momentum, and putting out weekly YouTube videos challenges me to pick up the camera more consistently, to try more experiments, and to reflect on my shoots and my creative process more intentionally. And I think that this creates inertia. The more often I pick up my camera for YouTube, the more likely I am to pick up my camera the next time a documentary idea pops into my head, or when there is a feeling or idea I want to express. So I didn't expect it, but 30 weeks into my channel, the process of making YouTube videos has definitely helped me build creative momentum beyond the platform.
Now for me, that's a good reason to make YouTube content, because it's helping him stay more consistent and more productive while sharing his work and process publicly. Most importantly, he's still out there actually making stuff. He's developing his skills as a working filmmaker and sharing the insights he's picking up along the way to help others. What he's not doing is creating generic gear content with the aim to monetize his channel as quickly as possible. In my opinion, this is the only way YouTube is going to work for most people, especially as things get more and more saturated. Because who really cares what someone in their basement has to say about a new gimbal if they're not actually using it to create? If Austin sticks with it, which it seems like he's going to after hitting weekly uploads for almost 6 months now, I think he will see real benefits. So no, it's not too late to start a YouTube channel in 2024. Is the market crowded? Yes. Is it hard to stand out? Definitely. Will you make a ton of fast cash? Almost certainly not. But will you be a more active, more productive, and more visible filmmaker? 100%. And on a long enough timeline, all those things build on each other to create a very public profile that's better self-promotion than any website that might eventually bring side hustle income and financial freedom. So if you take anything from this video, I hope it's that YouTube is still very much worth it, but only if you're going into it with both eyes open and something to say. See ya.